the company to do the rest.
Yeah. No, thanks, Richard. Richard, you were one of the youngest CEOs in the FTSE 100. What's your advice now as you look back on for people who are aspiring CEOs?
Well, firstly, no pain, no gain, really. If anybody thinks it's a sort of glamorous, easy role, then I would, very emphatically shatter that illusion. I think for their own benefit, sort of right up front, because it's a very tough job. People get paid a lot of money because it's very tough, and the responsibilities are enormous. And I think it's almost the hardest leap you make in your career, because in a sense most people are successful in companies because they come up a particular type of function. Either they're great at sales and marketing, or they're really good in finance, or they're great IT men, or whatever it may be. When you become the CEO, it's the first time where you've got to be an expert in every discipline in the company and take very big decisions. And I think that's one of the things that most people don't realise is a massive leap in terms of just the difficulty of the task and getting most of those decisions right, when in 8/10 of the cases you're not anything like an expert in the functions over which you're making a £80 million IT capital expenditure decision, initiating projects. So I think it's a huge leap from being a functional specialist, albeit senior, to being actually accountable for everything. On the other hand, it's a massive privilege. And like most things that are tough, there's a huge sense of satisfaction in getting at least some of it right. You won't ever get all of it right, because none of us are perfect. But getting the majority of things right and getting some really big decisions right and making a big difference, it's a huge privilege to be in that position, to be trusted to do that by the board or by the shareholders, and very satisfying when you see tough decisions being taken and a business really starting to improve and change and become more valuable. But it's tough on the way through, and nobody should be under any illusions that it's easy work. It's not. I think it's a very difficult work, very demanding, but very rewarding. Like most tough challenges, as I say, no pain, no gain, but if you take the pain, the gains are great, in the broadest sense.
Yeah, no, I really agree with you on that. It is I think people forget sometimes that it is a privilege, but a lot of responsibility. And also, I'm interested, Richard, in how you help yourself stay fresh, being at your best on a day-by-day level. What are some things that you do to make sure you're at your best?
Well, I've always, it's a bit of a Mars cliche, but I've always enjoyed work, rest and play, and I've always enjoyed doing other stuff than work. So you can't do a decent job unless you work extremely hard, and actually at the top you have to also put in extremely long hours. But I always spent a fair amount of what free time I had playing sport, because I found the whole exercise, competing, the need to concentrate on something else for an hour, whether we're playing a game of tennis or playing golf or hockey or whatever, and the social interaction with lots of other folk that you get by doing things like that. Or it could be playing music in an orchestra or in a band, which is something I did in my younger days. I think doing those other things are very important. And then the final thing is, just never forget your family. When you've stepped out of the job, it goes overnight, yet your family's there forever. And it's not just your kids, if you're at middle age like I am with a wife and children, but it's also your parents. They aren't going to be around forever. And when I was doing the job, one of the greatest helps to me was actually having a strong relationship with my father, who'd also been a businessman, who was somebody that I could talk to.
Right. And no, I can see that. And in terms of a mentor, have you as Archie and Nigel, you've had some very interesting role models to work with. Have they made a big impact on your career? They have.
I've been very lucky to have worked for some really ace people. And funny enough, I would always say, back to this people thing and about talent, a good way to navigate your career is always work for brilliant people. Go towards the best. And the best attract the best and develop the best. And I was lucky to join Mars, which was a company that really sought out good people and had great people inside the business. I went to Asda because of the opportunity to work with Archie Norman and Alan Layton. They were brilliant. Nigel Rudd was the most fantastic chairman at Boots and just taught me loads and loads. So I think I've been very lucky to work for some very, very capable people, and I would encourage youngsters who are sort of trying to plot a career path, go and work for great people, because you'll learn a lot. Be humble about what, how little you have yourself, and go and very greedily, work for others and seek out, the best of their tricks.
To find the 21st century leaders, but there aren't many around, are they?
There's lots of great people about, but if be a bit impatient. If you work for somebody you don't really respect, move.
No, definitely.
You know, don't sort of lumber under the pain of working for somebody who you don't think is adding a lot of value to you or not leading in the way that you believe in. You know, go and work for great people.
Great. And then Richard, in your career so far, have there been one or two sort of magic moments of? And I'm interested, what were they? You know, is it around achievements? Is it around people? You know, any magic moments?
Well, it's an interesting question. One that's very recent and quite personal to me is I left Boots a bit less than a year ago after 4 years of turning around and transforming the company. And you know, it was extremely hard work, and on the way through it didn't feel terribly rewarding, but towards the end when it really took off and some very big brave decisions had been taken and executed and it started to pay off, it gave me a sense of satisfaction. But the greatest satisfaction was about a week after I'd left the company, I got a letter from an employee. And this was a lady who I hadn't remembered, but on my very first day in the company, I didn't go to the head office. I went to half a dozen stores, Boots shops, which is where our customers were, which I thought was more important than walking around the head office building. And I got a letter from somebody I'd met in the first store on the first morning saying, "Dear Richard, you won't remember me, but I met you on your very first store visit on the first morning, and I walked up to you and said, hello, Mr. Baker," and you stopped and said, "No, you can call me Richard." And this lady said in her letter, "Well, if I can call you Richard, then you can call me Ruth, Richard." And she then went on to say, "Thank you for the enormous difference you made in our company, not just in terms of its profitability and turning it around and giving it a future and so on, but also in the way that you modernised our culture, where people could talk to each other as equals, whether, you know, I'm on the till and you're the boss, it didn't matter." And actually reading a letter like that she took the trouble to write 4 years afterwards and remembered, I think in a way those are the most rewarding little anecdotes, rather than the shareholder value created or what your bonus was or anything like that. It's knowing that you'd made a difference touching 100,000 people. So, you know, that would just be one recent
that's a fantastic
little story.
And you know, also when you look back, have there been any funny moments, you know, for you as a CEO when, you know, because you're in a position of big responsibility and people sometimes behave differently, or you must also face a lot of situations. Any particular funny moments?
I can't think of a lot of funny moments. I mean, there were moments that made you want to cry, you know, because you either thought the situation was so desperate or difficult, or you found ridiculous things going on.
It's funny, I've asked that question to a number of CEOs, and virtually all of them struggle. Which is interesting, isn't it?
It's not laugh a minute.
No.
This is not full of laughs doing this job. It's hard work. But
if you take Richard Branson, you know, his mindset is to make it fun, to celebrate more, and maybe there's something that we could bring to the corporate world, you know, because I think it'll lift people, you know, in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, I can't honestly think of moments that were just really outrageously funny. I mean, there were really, what you remember are the really, really decisive and usually tough moments where you had to make very big and worrying decisions, where you probably lost 3 nights' sleep before you really settled on which way you were going to go on something. Those are the memories that really stick out, the really tough, difficult decisions, and you know, agonising over what was the right thing to do. Those are the really, as I look back over the last 5-10 years, making those really big decisions, those are the most memorable things.
And also, Richard, you know, are there any sort of, in your mind, secrets to being a great CEO?
Well, I think there's a few things that if you don't do them right, you're not going to be a great CEO. I think you've got to create a compelling vision for the company. People have to know where they're headed or they can't follow. So I think it's absolutely the duty of a CEO to create a compelling vision. You don't have to actually originate it yourself, but you have to ensure that there is one. So, you know, you can get other people around you to help create it if you're not the most creative or imaginative person, but you have to let your organisation know where you're headed and what good looks like, what the end of the journey is. I think as a CEO, uniquely, you have to develop your own way of communicating with your employees. And indeed communicating with your other stakeholders, whether they be, you know, shareholders or, you know, in my case at Boots, we had a very big business with the Department of Health, who paid for all the pharmacy product we put through. So having a relationship there. So I think you have to learn to be an effective communicator, and then I think you have to be never satisfied, because the CEO has to be the one who just keeps saying more, driving the organisation on, setting higher goals, demanding more. So you have to be sort of